Well, I've made myself chuckle. We managed to go live without actually pushing the go live button, which was quite entertaining to see everybody's faces. I thought, why has that gone through so quickly? That'll be why. Because we weren't actually live, but we are now. And welcome. Lovely to have you with us, whether you are watching live or whether you are watching later on in your own leisure time. Lovely to have you with us. We have got a lovely little panel here, once again, all the way from over in the US of A. We've got Mr. John Commode with us today. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, that's been too bad. Obviously, it's been a difficult last couple of days and that, but obviously it was good that we got the win, and obviously shout out to the women's team for an excellent result today at Everton. So a bit of good news on the football pitch.
Absolutely, 100%. And of course, just down below us there, in front of possibly the most interesting backdrop we've had in the last few weeks, is Mr. Tony. How you doing, sir, down there?
I'm good, bud. I'm good. I'm just a unique background. Won't be for the foreseeable future. Next time we'll be back in my office room, doing the shows from there. But it's nice being in my bedroom doing a show. I guess it's more comfortable. I suppose. I guess you gotta take the good with the bad.
Very unique picture when you're speaking with a still face.
Yeah.
He's completely
still face.
Yeah. Everything is going, but your face hasn't moved.
Yeah,
like
the room around me is a bit
that reincarnation of Stephen Hawking, isn't it?
This is absolutely brilliant. Beyond anything I've ever seen before, and frankly I find it hilarious. So there we go. Good stuff there, but good to have you on board, Tony. So it's threefold today. We are of course going to, as ever, dissect everything that we've seen. Obviously it's been a while. We've missed out the whole international break. A couple of reasons for that. I'm not usually as about during the midweek, and we need to send our best wishes, all of us here at All for United, to Dan, RTP Field, the guy who usually does the co-host with us and runs the midweek mayhem. He was supposed to do one about 2 weeks ago, week and a half, and unfortunately he got taken to hospital, so he's not too well at the minute. So we send all of our love and our good wishes to you, Dan. We hope you are back soon, not least because it means I've got less to do on the channel. But obviously, the most important thing is that you are well. So that's for you, sir. And we hope you are better and back with us, chatting and shooting the breeze as soon as you can do. So we're talking about that. And we did have it planned to do a season so far show. That was what we was going to do. So we're going to kind of just run the rule over how we think the season's gone so far and what we can look forward to over the next couple of months. And of course, no show would be complete without our own thoughts and memories of the legend, the great that is Sir Bobby Charlton. So we will definitely be coming back to him very soon. Before we do, we're going to continue with the Sheffield United result. And it's quite a good one. 2-1 at the end of the day, but probably should have been more. John, tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on the match yesterday.
Yeah, so obviously, rest in peace, Bobby Charlton. To begin with, it was very sad news. Obviously, no surprise with his age, but and obviously we knew he had dementia for a long time. So rest in peace to his family. Of course, the game, I thought, it obviously took us a while to get going into the game. We didn't really start the game well. I felt the first time where we did something useful was McTominay's first goal, which was obviously a well taken goal by him, and then obviously we see at the other end the penalty that was conceded. So it's not learning from scoring and then conceding within 5 or 6 minutes. But obviously, as the game went on, I thought we did play a bit better. I think the substitutes in the second half, bringing Eriksson and Garnacho, had an impact on the game. We controlled the game better, and obviously it took a great strike from Dello to win the game. Obviously, we did have more chances to win the game by more. And, it was a struggle against a team that's only got 1 point from 9 games this season, Sheffield United. But in many ways, it was always going to be. But thankfully, we got a result, and, we got to play better because we all know who we got next week. So, but at least we got the 3 points in what was difficult circumstances with the passing of Sir Bobby.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now?
We can still see you, mate. Still see you, but you're not moving. It's on it. I mean, to be fair, we're probably seeing more movement from you than we are from some of the other players that have played for us over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, not too bad. So we'll listen to you, Tony, and then maybe you can jump out and jump back in again.
I'll do that. I was actually at the game last night. I was at Bramall Lane.
Very nice.
So I live in Sheffield. So I have friends who are Sheffield United season ticket holders. One of my friend's dads couldn't go because he's not well at the moment. And I went to the game, sat with the Sheffield faithful, had to kind of keep my mouth shut the whole game, which was hard. But there wasn't really anything to get excited about first half. I honestly thought that Blades were the better team first half. I thought they were having more possession of the ball, doing more meaningful things in the final third than United were. But, touch of individual brilliance gets us ahead. And then the duality of McTominay does one thing brilliant, it's a daft rule, the handball rule, and I'm still getting my head around it to this day because you see 1,000,001 things that don't get given as a handball. You see 1,000,001 things that are handball. I personally think it was a handball, but I'm not going to argue that. But it's just a rule that I think needs proper clarification going forward. And to be fair, I think we just edged yesterday. I think the last 20 minutes we looked the better team. We looked the more likely to score. I think coming out of it, I had more questions than answers to a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things with United at the moment where I go, there's periods of the game where I think we look really good, and then there's other periods of the game where I go, it looks like we've played together for the first time, and there's no coherency in the team, But there were some good performances. I think the praise has got to be as loud as the disrespect with a lot of these players. Like Maguire, I thought was man of the match yesterday. I thought Onana had a very good game. And McTominay scores another goal for us. He must be in our top 2 goal scorers at this point after two games. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come out of the studio, come back in again.
I will look forward to seeing you possibly moving about. So that'll be fun. Meanwhile, we are going to touch on Scott McTominay because there's a lot being said about it. Dav's brought up here, John, that Jennifer's mentioned out that, Scott's done more for United than the millionaire showboaters, whereas Dav's pointed out the fact that he had 9 touches before his goal. He's an average United player. I get where Jennifer's coming from, insofar as I've always said Scott McTominay's in the mould of Darren Fletcher, the sort of player who, isn't pushing himself out there to try and be your Ronaldo or your Beckham or someone like that. He's really interested in the limelight. What he seems to be interested in is, hello, nice to see you moving there. What we are seeing from Scott McTominay is just that passion. He feels like one of us. When I look at Scott McTominay, I see him as one of us, a United fan, effectively on the pitch, giving everything and doing everything that he can. And his goal, I mean, let's be clear, it wasn't the best strike he's ever going to have in his life, but he's finding himself in the right positions. He's putting his effort in, and he does get in and around the match. Now, I know you mentioned about the fact that he made something like 6 or 7 passes in that half, but he completed them. And how much of that do you think is to do with Scott McTominay not being at the level that people are thinking that he should be at? And how much of that is just that the game was bypassing the midfield and that actually he just wasn't able to get into it and he had to work too hard to get into it and to affect the game from the midfield?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting with Tomini. I do agree he does symbolise a lot about United. He's from the youth. I don't think you question his commitment ever. Whether he's good enough is another debate. Obviously, it epitomises that because obviously the Brentford game he he scored 2 goals stoppage time, which was very Fergie-esque after obviously the passing of Cathy Ferguson, and obviously yesterday was Bobby got another goal, of midfielder scoring a goal, in tribute to Sir Bobby. So he definitely has the right attitude. I just think with McTominay that in spite of his goal, I wouldn't personally say he had a good game because he, when I'm pulling the total, I think he came off on the hour mark and he completed something like 9 passes the whole game, and that suggests. I'm not one to look at stats. I don't particularly like stats of that mold, but when you play for an hour and you're in the midfield, you ought to be collecting the ball a bit more and distributing. For example, Harry Maguire completed like 93, 94 passes in the game. I think Amrabat completes about 60. When you look at that kind of thing, Ericsson came off the bench, and he passed the ball a lot more when he came on. So, and he played half the time as Scott McTominay. So for me, he has his uses. He's certainly very good around the box. He's quite a good striker of the ball. I know a few people said, he played as a striker at youth level. It's right, but it's also wrong because he did. The reason he played up top is because we're going through an injury crisis, and the reserve coach at the time put McTominay up front for a couple of games, and that's so he has played there, and obviously he's got a very good strike on the ball, and he, without question, I personally think the Brentford game shows his strength because if you want someone to the ball to fall in the box, there aren't actually that many plays you put ahead of him to have a strike on goal around the penalty box, because he is a good striker of the ball and he will pop up with the odd goal from time to time. And I just think that Stu made the point, I think, after the Brentford game, he did very well when he came off the bench against Brentford, and he did score yesterday, and I felt he would score yesterday, but there's something about he's got to get that consistency. He can't just be relying on moments like coming off to score 2 goals every time. You've got to make sure that you're pushing for a start and putting in performances, which, it's great when you do score, but if we talk about that's the only thing that he did in the whole game, then it's a bit of an issue. So I get that. I do like McTominay. I think he's a very good squad player, but I would say you still need a little bit more from him personally. But he no doubt has the right attitude, and he symbolises a lot of the good things about from being from the youth and representing the Manchester United shirt.
It's an interesting point that you make, Tone, John. And Tone, I wanted to get you to sort of carry on from that. But can I just want to take a moment? Michael Carrick, where do we rate Michael Carrick amongst midfielders for Manchester United? I mean, he's up there, right?
Top 10 for
From
definitely.
what I've seen, yeah.
Top 10. Okay. So I know you don't like stats, John, so this one's probably going to work again. Scott McTominay has scored 22 goals for Manchester United in 216 appearances. Michael Carrick had 464 appearances and 24 goals. So Scott McTominay is weighing in more on the goal side than people like Michael Carrick. John's just said there, if all he's doing is coming on and scoring a goal, that's an issue. I'd argue that for a Manchester United side at the moment that is severely lacking in terms of putting the ball in the net, you're going to need someone like a Scott McTominay to step up and score us a goal, because without it, we may not have gone on to beat Sheffield United, Tony.
Yeah, to be fair, McTominay did have the greatest game yesterday. He was kind of anonymous a large parts of the game, and but he comes up with the goods. Sometimes you don't need to have a 10 out of 10 performance to have an impact on the pitch. And before that, we did not look like we were going to score. And to be fair, he made it out of nothing. That ball from Bruno to him, he really shouldn't have controlled that well, and he's tucked it in. And but I do agree with John. I don't think he had a great game yesterday, but that's fine. You know what I mean? He did what he needed to do. He got us a goal. I know the penalty, that could have happened to anyone. You know what I mean? It hits his arm. I don't think he's purposely looking to put his arm there. There's a lot of things issues with United that I don't think Scott McTominay is a problem for us to be worried about or to think about. I think he's a very good utility player, much akin to say like Darren Fletcher. Like Darren Fletcher didn't play every single game for Man United, but when he comes on, you can tell Scott really wants to give 110% every game, and whether or not he has a 5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 game, you can always see he's putting 100% of effort into that game, which you can't say about some other players that go missing in certain moments. So I guess I do think though with Michael Carrick and Scott McTominay, it's like comparing a Lamborghini to a Ford Fiesta. You know, I mean, like I think Michael Carrick, I know goals aside, you know, his impact he had on the field. Like a lot of people compare him to Sergio Busquets, and that's how I like to see him as, a lot more so than a goal scorer. But I get your point though, Barry.
The thing is though, if you're going to compare a Lamborghini and a Ford Fiesta, ultimately a car's job is to get you from one place to another.
Yeah.
And I'd argue the Ford Fiesta is probably better at getting you from one place to another more regularly than the Lamborghini, which, let's be honest, is for people that might be compensating for something.
I just think Michael Carrick is one of the best midfielders we've ever created in England, to be honest. I think he's in the top 25.
I think the other thing with Carrick and this, where the difference between Carrick and McTominay is that Carrick, his main role was to take the ball off the defenders and pass it forward. McTominay, that I think we can agree that's not his main strength, and that's what I mean when I mentioned like the 9 passes. To me, that tells me he's not receiving the ball in midfield, and where I will criticise him at times is sometimes I do feel he's like hiding away behind like the opponents where he can't receive the ball, and this is where he perhaps has been played out of position at times, whereas as opposed to Michael Carrick, McTominay is good around the box. You know, he is good around the box. You won't rely on, I know Carrick scored a couple of important goals for us, but that wasn't his game, whereas with McTominay, he's more, I guess, box to box in many ways, and you know, he can be a threat, you know, going forwards more than defensively, whereas Carrick was perhaps better defensively. You know, that's where you would say it's different. So while I do agree with the goals, and this is the challenge I would set McTominay, because he's played for United for 6-7 years now, and he's scored how many goals? Scored about 23, 24.
A bit longer. 2013 for Scott McTominay was when he joined us. And
we're saying his senior debut.
But he's made his debut around 2017, 2018, I think.
It were around that time, yeah.
So it was around that. It was 2017 against Arsenal.
Right. Jose Mourinho.
So that's what I mean. So what's that, about 6-7 seasons now? So this is my challenge for McTominay. I think being a squad player, you're capable of scoring 10 goals a season for United with your ability as finishing ability. That's where I will set a challenge to it. I mean, I don't know what his biggest goal scoring season is, but I would have thought that it might be around 7. So for me, I would set a challenge to him. He's now 27. Right, for me, Scott, you can push 10 goals a season. You know, that's what I think you're capable of doing. Can you do it? That's where I will set a challenge to him. But he does have his uses, you know, and I do think at times he has been played out of position at times when it's not his strength. But if you get him around the box, he's capable of producing the goods from time to time.
I think you're right. And I think a lot of that comes down to, again, who he's playing alongside as well. Because, you know, when he was playing alongside Fred, with Bruno in front, maybe he felt like he needed to compensate a bit more, going backwards and all sorts. So, yeah, good points, well made, everybody there. We won't spend long on the penalty, other than to just say nobody understands the rules anymore. Let's be honest, I thought it was a penalty.
Oh,
I did, because it did stop the ball, and he sort of moves his body that way, possibly to try and get his chest on it rather than his arm. But ultimately, it probably should have been given. 3 out of 4 people on the poll that I put on as we were playing the game also agreed with me that it should be a penalty. But it's just frustrating, isn't it, Tony, to watch this football match, see that get given when we've seen people effectively behave like Superman, throw their arms out this way and it hits them. and then it's not given. Yet Scott McTominay keeps them down low, and is just moving his body. I mean, again, still a penalty, but we see those given. But the ones where the arms are way out at the moment seem to not be being given at all.
I think it's a kind of a mixture of things. I think the Spurs game for me, where Romero basically jumps on ball with his hands and it's not given as a penalty, but what Scott McTominay has done to avoid the ball completely, and his arm's just in the wrong place. You know, it's one of them. I was sat about up to the side, and I could see it right on my eye line, and from about 20 rows back, I could see it was handball, and it's one of them. I think the rules need to be clarified in the sense of it needs to be universal. Like in Europe, for example, if it hits your hands, it doesn't matter if it's accidental, intentional. If it hits your hand and your body's out of position, it's a penalty. Unless it deflects, and I think there's a bit of leeway on that. But there's been so many changes in so many rules recently. It does feel like we're hard done by the look a little bit because, you take away the Spurs game, and there's been a couple of instances in Europe where we've had handballs given against us where we've done the same. It's happened to us in an attacking sense, not being given. And I think that's where the frustration lies within. It's not because we don't agree that the handballs that have been given against us weren't handballs. They were, for the most part. But the fact is, it's not reciprocated on the other side of the pitch when we've had those chances and it's not been given. I think we've not had a penalty now, apart from the Nottingham Forest game, when we have had a penalty in all competitions. It's been ages. We don't get penalties. It seems weird.
I think back to the Halcyon days where we got penalties when the final whistle's been blown against Brighton.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
What a day that was. I'll still never get over that. That was.
I'd be interested to know how many penalties because obviously Klopp had that moan a couple of years ago about the number of penalties we were getting. And I mean, I don't know how many penalties we got since then, but you can probably count them on your hand, can't you?
Yeah.
A long time since I've seen Bruno's little hop, step and a jump.
Yeah.
Certainly feels that way anyway. So, John, we'll move it over to you. If you've got something you want to add about the handball, feel free. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
Because Tony's already said he got the Man of the Match award for him. And there's this stat going around at the moment, isn't there? It's a bit of an interesting one.
Yeah.
Which is where we've won 15 out of 16 matches since October 22 with him in the game. Not lost a match. Whereas in the 42 games that he didn't play in, we only won 22. So there's a big difference in the win percentage. Yeah. There's a lot being made of the teams that Harry's played against in those 15, 16 games. But I think, is there not a point to be made that at the moment, especially this season, less so last season, especially this season, even when we have been playing the so-called lesser opposition, let's not forget Sheffield United at the bottom of the table. Yeah. It was only 2-1. Is there still something to be said that actually, is this just the anti-Harry Maguire lot having a go at him again? Yeah. Or is there something to be made out of that? Because personally, I felt Harry had a really good game last night.
Yeah.
And I still think he's one of the 3 best defenders that we've probably got and possibly deserves more starting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Briefly on the penalty first. I did think it was a penalty. I think the other factor is it did travel a distance, the ball, so it was from the edge and, Scott was near the penalty spot. So unfortunately, it did travel a fair distance. So unfortunately, it was a penalty.
13 yards, I can confirm, having watched it.
That's sufficient distance, isn't it? So, whereas as for Maguire, he had a very good game and he has played well. He played well against Brentford before the international break as well. And it's pleasing he appears to be going back into form. I do wonder whether him losing the captaincy might have alleviated some of the pressure off him where he can just focus on purely playing in that. Obviously, he's had to be patient for his opportunities. He did play well there, and we look a bit more solid now since him and particularly Johnny Evans as well. Shout out to Johnny Evans as well because he's, they did have a few opportunities, but But I think the main criticism with the Brentford and Sheffield United wins was that we had enough chance to score maybe 4 or 5, and we only won 2-1. So, but yeah, overall, we have been a bit better and more solid at the back, and he certainly deserves more of a start. As for that start, it comes against. Yeah, I mean, you got to factor in, well, because I was thinking about this. So he started 15 games in a year, but how many games have United played in that year? That's the other thing that you might to factor in as well, possibly that
57 would be more 58, I suppose, is what they're saying.
So it's kind of like, I get like he's had a hard time and you need to promote him and all that, but if you look at it logically, he does need to look at maybe starting games more often, kind of thing, and he is starting to get an opportunity now. And I think a lot of the games where he has been playing and starting a bit tended to be against teams who are in the league, possibly, or League Cup games and that. So that's not saying that he, you got. You could easily still play badly in those games, but for me, we have been solid when he has played. But for me, I just think, well, I don't get the criticism he's been having. He's not a bad player. He's not like a joke. Yeah, he's made mistakes, but so many of our players have made mistakes. I think when he had the captaincy and obviously the 80 million tag, he's received unfair criticism. And for me, these stats, if I was him, I wouldn't particularly focus on that and just say, look, I'm not interested in 93% percentage. The question is, will he start against City next week? Can we get a win with him in the side? That's worth more than what those stats are, with respect. So if he was to start the game against City and we win it, and, unlikely, but let's say if we were to keep a clean sheet, for example, then you might look at it and think, wow, that is a big result. But, only time will tell. But for me, he played very well and he's looking more solid. And he has his uses, Maguire. I've always said he's a good squad player and, he might not be good enough.
I think that's John who's gone, is it?
I think so, buddy. I think so.
I have brief moments where I wonder if that was me about to drop out, but it's not. So whilst John's just coming back from the land of the spinny white circle, we shall return back over to you, Tone. Well, actually, I wanted to mention this quickly that Dav brought up. Talking about Scott McTominay again, he said, why should he get a lengthy run? He's been here 7 years and proven to be not good enough. If our levels are only mid-table, then yeah, he's that level. I mean, again, I'll point it out. In the Euro qualifiers, he's the top goal scorer with Højlund, who's not scored for us yet in the Premier League. I think it's a bit harsh to be saying that he's not good enough. He's clearly good enough. And this is the problem that I have. These players would run rings about half the people that are telling them they're not good enough. He's a quality player. He's just maybe not always fit into the system that's being played. But this season, he's showing he can be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Scott McTominay, beg your pardon, I think there's a lot of benefit to him being in the team. Like when we need an out and out, like someone with height in our team, who's got an aerial presence, has got a bit of a threat about him. Who have we got on the team apart from Højlund who can do that? We had Weghorst last year, and to be fair, Weghorst was awful.
He's not
Johnny Evans now, and this is what I'm saying. Like I think people need to stop looking at it from a FIFA standpoint and stop saying, oh, this player's only 78 rated. He's got this amount of pace, this, that, and the other. If he does a job for us, I don't care what your name is, what you look like, where you're from, as long as you're going to do a job for us, that's all that matters. And I think McTominay's doing a job for us at the moment. He's done a job in the last 2 games. I think whether or not I agree that he should start every single game is irrelevant. At this moment in time, he's playing himself into his team, and that's what we've got to, and I respect Erik ten Hag for starting him because I don't think he was going to start him yesterday.
No, for sure. John, did you have anything you wanted to finish off there before you were spun away by the white
Sorry
wall?
about that. I'll just briefly explain what happened. I had my charger plugged by the printer, so I knew my laptop battery as well, so I plugged it in before the show. My wife has only just told me that plug doesn't work, so I've had to plug it in another socket. So apologies.
Outrageous behaviour.
So
that's a yellow card for your wife, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Courtney, you
Allowing
got
that to happen. Unbelievable, Jeff.
No, so
What a thing
anyway, I can't remember where. No, but Harry Maguire played well, didn't he? So he fair play to him, and I just hope that he can, keep his form going. Whether he's right long term, only time will tell. But he's certainly a bit like McTominay. He's got his uses in the team, and he's good to have for certain games. So yeah, fair play to him.
And a lot's been said about Harry, says NT. A lot of it fair, a little not. If a player plays well, it should be said, especially if poor performances are criticised so vehemently. It leads to abuse. I think that's the
100%.
perfect point to be made. The last thing really I wanted to talk about then with regards to the Sheffield United game was, of course, Diogo Dalot's goal and Tony Water. I mean, it was brilliant watching on the telly. I can imagine being there. That must have been a knock your socks off moment.
I was diagonal to him, so I could see when I was right across from where he was when he shot it. And you know what? It took so much of my willpower not to start cheering it and not to start celebrating. So I just had my mate who was sat next to me just saw this massive grin out of my face. I just went, you know what? Sometimes a moment of brilliance can save you in games where we haven't played well. Because yesterday we didn't play well, in my opinion. I thought we were terrible for periods of the game. But Dalot, he didn't have the greatest game yesterday, but he comes up with something like that. It doesn't matter, and he wins us the game. I think Dalot's a lot more. It's got a little bit more attacking threat than people give him credit for. He was actually trying to get involved in so much of our attacks. Like, you look at, I'm not going to give Lindelof any abuse for being a left back. He's makeshift, you know what I mean? But you look at the left side, Rashford had no service to him yesterday. You know how Shaw and Rashford interconnect with one another so intricately. And whereas like with Dalot and Anthony, you could see that Dalot was providing so much support in the attacking, and he came to an inverted midfield position, and just I can't explain it. It'll probably be up there, top 5 goals of the season. I know my mate next to me said Foderingham could have saved it, but it was top bins. It was top bins.
Yeah, I think it was interesting the way I looked at it from the keeper was that because he dived with both hands, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because usually you find a lot of keepers dive with one hand, usually. Now, I'm thinking whether, I'm not a goalkeeping expert, but whether he would have been better off going with one hand, so that he could get maximum force, because it's kind of like hard when both hands are like that for you to get on. So, it's a fantastic strike by Dalot, and obviously with Sir Bobby, it was worthy of a strike. No, I would have thought to Sir Bobby, it's a shame that Amrabat strike didn't go in.
Honestly, there was some power. There was 2 moments before. If Bruno's free kick went in, it was literally this close. It couldn't have been any closer, and it would have been top bins.
I personally think it would have been more fitting for Sir Bobby if that Amrabat went in rather than the low one, because Sir Bobby was always fun to try. I can't imagine Sir Bobby would have curled too many the top corner. I don't know.
Not with them balls that they had back in his day.
But it was a fantastic strike. The low in off the crossbar, and I think in the end we did deserve to win the game, and it was a good job that we got that goal. So
absolutely, it was a heck of a goal. Dav with the last word on the McTominay situation. He scored against minnow teams like Cyprus. That's Cyprus, not Argentina. You can only score against the teams that are against you. Ultimately. Say that out loud. Don't just
scored 2 against Spain.
Maguire is this Maguire?
No, it's
McTominay. So he scored 2 against Spain. So
against Spain,
and he was on luck. It's not San Marino against Spain, wasn't he?
That's Hoyland's group.
Well, in that case, you're quite right. They're minnows, Spain, rubbish. Who have they got? It makes me laugh. If people just don't like players, just say you don't like them and they're just not for you. Don't keep on trying to come up with arguments against it that make it sound like you're being polite, because you're quite welcome to not like him. You don't have to. So there we go. Neil's popped in. Nice to see you, Neil. Why am I not in the show today? I haven't heard from you from quite a while. But you never know. If you get in touch, we might be able to see you again. Why is John speaking American? He's only been there a couple of months and he's picking up the twangs already. So there we go. And NT, I thought Lindelof did well playing out of position. Good point. He gets thrown with different partners at centre back, plays full back. More often than not, puts good shift in. Good squad player for us. It was interesting. We did hit the bar, hit the post a couple of times, but I think now is the right time. And it was certainly the segue moment that I had with Diogo Dalot and his goal to take a little moment just as United family to think about Sir Bobby Charlton and what he's done for this club. And it was a strange moment for me. You know, when I found out that there was obviously rumours circulating online before it actually got announced, that I spoke to a few people that I know, and it was looking like it was true. It was just, John, we spoke about it backstage. It was the equivalent of hearing about the Queen in terms of seismic events for us as a club, because as Sir Alex Ferguson said, there's nobody within Manchester United's history that embodies Manchester United history as much as Sir Bobby Charlton. For him to have been with us, to have been one of the Busby Babes, and indeed the last of the Busby Babes that were on that plane to pass away. He was on that plane. He was part of the rebuilding, integral to that rebuilding of the football club. Went on 10 years later, as everybody knows, to hold the European Cup high 2 years before. He had been the guy that held the World Cup up above his head as well. Just an amazing couple of years, and an amazing situation to be in. And then he went on to be just the most amazing ambassador for this football club that anyone could ever be. And it was something that I found really interesting, because we look at his stats: 758 appearances, which was obviously beaten by Ryan Giggs, 249 goals, which was obviously beaten by Wayne Rooney. And you sit and you think about these statistics, and you think about 50 years' time when there's other people sat here in All for United having these conversations. They're going to be talking about how Wayne Rooney was such a legend of the game. And I think what I find frustrating is when you look at someone like Bobby Charlton, he was just a gentleman, loved by everybody, loved and respected by so many different countries and clubs and supporters. And make of it what you will, the likes of Ryan Giggs and Wayne Rooney, they've got their little black marks against their name for things that they've done. They don't have that level, purity, the right word, of respect across the game as somebody like Sir Bobby Charlton has. And I just wanted to give you guys a chance really to put across your thoughts and your feelings. I mean, Tony, what sort of atmosphere was it like being at Bramall Lane with obviously you were probably down in the Sheffield United end, so you may not have seen so many of the United fans, but what was your general feeling of what the atmosphere was like, and just sort of how the occasion weighed on you for that day?
So universal respect, to be honest. I think take away the fact he was a United legend, he was a legend of football. Like, you know, he won a Ballon d'Or, he was a knight. You know, the things he did for football go beyond Manchester United. Like, obviously, I was unfortunate not to see him play, but I've heard stories from my gran and my dad about how much that England team and that United team of old were so brilliant. You know, the '66 team, he was one of the best players. You know, he was so instrumental in bringing United to the forefront of European football. And I think people don't. I watched a film called United with David Tennant in. I don't know if you two have seen it. It's a brilliant film. It's really interesting to see. Like, I got into a deep dive about Bobby before the game, Sir Bobby, before the game yesterday, because I obviously, as someone who's a lot younger than most who remember him fondly and stuff, a lot more fondly than I would have. I think just knowing the history and just knowing what he was as a person. You know, I read a quote from yesterday. His dream when he quit football was to own a shop. That's all he wanted on the high street. You know, that's what football's all about, isn't it? It's the working man's game, working person's game. It's about, you know, coming from small beginnings and, you know, becoming a hero. And I think Bobby Charlton exceeded that. There's a quote, someone said it to me after my dad passed away, and he said, "You never truly pass away until the last person who cared about you forgets your name." And Bobby might not be with us anymore, but his memory will live on far beyond our years, our kids' years, our grandkids' years. He's etched into the club forever, and I think that's, it's beautiful. But yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the Sir Bobby Charlton stand. We've got that. That's forever going to be there, much like the Sir Alex Ferguson stand. And John, I think the other thing that I get from all of this is he was the top scorer for England and the top scorer for Manchester United for so long. And he was a bloody midfield player. Like, we're sitting here talking about Michael Carrick and Scott McTominay now. They've got different games. Yeah. This guy was just legendary to be able to do that from midfield. Ryan Giggs, he only got 168 goals and he played 963 games. So that just shows you Bobby played 205 games less than him and scored 81 goals more. That's just absolutely mad, and just goes to show what an absolutely wonderful player he was.
Yeah, and he was, and you're right, Smith. I think he did start out as a striker, though. So, his first 100 goals came in no time, virtually, like 120 games or something. I don't know the exact numbers. So he did start off as a striker, and I should say I have personally written a tribute. Sarah Stacey, obviously, we have on the women's channel, Red Devil Women website. I asked her if I could write a tribute to him, and it's out there for people to see. It's on my Facebook, it's also on me Twitter if people want to take a look at it and that. But it's essentially he was Mr. Manchester United, and nobody embodies Manchester United more than him. We lived through Munich, where so many of his friends passed away. And he played with the spirit of them, for the rest of his career. And obviously it led to us winning the European Cup 10 years later. I personally had the honour of meeting him twice, actually. First time I got his autobiography, the Manchester United years, signed. I think it was around 2007 it came out. He was very humble, very honest, and also the second time I met him, ironically, is a bit of a funny story because I used to work in the mega store at Old Trafford, and I was on the tills working one day, and I think he came in with like his grandson or something, and he came up to the till, and one of my friends, Joe, was serving him, and he literally and in the mega store, if you have a membership, a season ticket, you get 10% off. And us as cashiers had to ask people, do you have a season ticket or membership? Anyway, my friend Joe, he literally asked him, do you have a membership? and he said, yeah, I do. I was like, please, can I see it? And he looked absolutely horrified. He turned to me and I just shook my head. And anyway, the manager intervened, and they said that, he got his 10% off. He walked out the store, and I just said to my friend, "You did know that was Sir Bobby Charlton." He couldn't believe it, So it was quite a funny moment that. But I think if I'm right, I think he was the only player to have ever won the English League, the FA Cup, European Cup, World Cup, and won the Ballon d'Or. So that's. He's unique. He was, in my opinion, England's greatest footballer. Obviously, Duncan Edwards, a shout out to him, but obviously, unfortunately, passed away. But in terms of what Bobby did in the game, no one compares to him. And I hope that he's honoured forever. He's got the Trinity statue. And I also think I read Henry Winter, I think it was, and he said the FA should commission a statue of him to be at Wembley because he won the World Cup there and he won the European Cup there. And obviously there's a statue to Bobby Moore there, and I think there ought to be one of Sir Bobby Charlton personally. But just one man, and it's a very tragic day, and I'm sure myself, like many others, I did shed a tear yesterday in the game. As I said backstage, Barry, almost like you couldn't focus on the game with the news. Obviously we had to win for the league, but in terms of it puts life into perspective. So I just think it was a sad day, and I'm glad we got the win. And may rest in peace.
Absolutely. As NT says here, if I could pick one player from our rich history that represents the ethos, values, and character, as well as the skill and talent we should always aspire to at United, it's undoubtedly Sir Bobby. We've spoken a bit about in the past about the Busby Babes and the history that this club has got. I still find it amazing that when we did our greatest 11, we didn't manage to find space for Bobby Charlton in our midfield due to the fact that people are still so blinded by the 90s and the rather amazing Fergie fledglings, but that's recency bias for you. We are in a really interesting situation now because we've mentioned that was the last of the Busby Babes that was on that plane.
And that's first on the aircraft completely as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that part of our history, so to speak, now is over. And it's a bit like, I suppose, when you have the last people from World War One and the last people from World War Two, how when they pass on, it really does end a chapter that will now only ever be history, that will never be spoken about by people that were in that situation ever again. We've only got the history books and the internet. There's lots said about Bobby Charlton, lots said about the Busby Babes, but with the way this football club is at the moment, and to be honest, the utter shambles that it appears to be at times, for me, genuinely, yesterday and Bobby's passing reminded me of what it is that we love about this football club, and that is the rich history and the fact that it's our football club and that he loved it as much as all of us do. Like it was his blood. He loved this football club. And Jennifer talked a little bit about how he had to endure the shenanigans around the owners and remain silent. And I think for me, that was kind of what I took away from it, was that actually that was the first proper 90 minutes I watched of Man United. Although it was, quite offensive to the eyes at times, it was my club. And it's a good thing that we've had that time to be together and to watch it. So it's hard to know what else to say. It's a really horrifically sad time for us. Got a horrible cough, sorry, but Dav, you've nailed it there. R.I.P. Sir Bobby Charlton, proper legend, gentleman, and as I put in my tweets, cornerstone of Manchester United FC. So R.I.P. And onwards we move, because that is how life goes. Unfortunately, once somebody dies, we do have to move on. That is life. And I had a question that popped up that I found really interesting. I saw it on Twitter the other day and I went, that's a good question. So we'll lighten the mood a little bit by throwing this to you. If you could have one player from our squad who would remain injury-free for the rest of their career, who would you pick?
I know.
Go on then, Tony.
Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw is genuinely our only world-class player. Like, bar him and Rashford, he is our only world-class player in our team. He's honestly the best left-back in world football. And people don't realise the reason why we've been so bad is because he's not in our team. He's not playing. Like honestly, Luke Shaw is the reason why Rashford isn't scoring as much. I've sussed it all out. Luke Shaw is genuinely
the only world-class player at Man United.
Okay, so here's an argument for you, right?
Bruno Fernandes not world-class.
He's a very, very top elite player, right? He's in the same class as, I think, like Heung-min Son, where he's on the echelon of world-class, but he's not consistent enough to be world-class, if that makes any sense. This is going to sound... No, like Luke Shaw is the only Man United player who walks into that Man City team. He's the only player who walks. Name one of them. Name one of them. Man United.
That Luke Shaw is consistent to this level that you want to say for world class.
I genuinely think Luke Shaw's the best player we've got. Honestly, I figured
a house and a half. I wish there was more
honestly, Luke Shaw walks into any team in world football. Rashford walks into most teams in world football, but Bruno Fernandes, I've watched him play this season, and I feel like maybe I'm being very recently. I've got a lot of recent bias, but yeah, I think Bruno's a brilliant player when he wants to be, but when he wants to be, isn't all the time. There's moments where I feel like his
When he
emotions get the
wants to
better.
be, feels a bit harsh. It's almost as if he went, "Oh, I can't be bothered today."
Honestly, it looks like that. It obviously isn't that. I'm sure he goes to every game and he's a great ambassador for the club. He's a great player. But there's games where I watch him play, and let's say it felt like he was just hitting and hoping. He wasn't playing his football, and it just feels.
I'm very intrigued by your answers.
Yeah.
Dav, he's thrown in. Luke Shaw's future is centre back. He can't get up and down like he once did.
No, he'll come back and he'll prove you wrong, Dav. He'll prove you wrong. And Casemiro and Varane were world class. They're not world class anymore. They're not world class players anymore. They've not got the legs for it.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't saying they weren't world class players. I'm saying who right now on ability is world class.
Casemiro's stats at the moment are shabby.
Yeah, and Varane can't stay fit for 5 games.
Well, this is the question.
I've created an argument now that I didn't think was going to happen. I just think Luke Shaw is such a vital cog to this United team, and I feel like with him missing,
Luke Shaw. Yeah. John, you've had a reasonable amount of time there to whittle your answers down to one. Who are you going for?
It's quite difficult. No, I gotta go different. I'm gonna say Rasmus Højlund, because I think he'll only get better. And I think he's not quite there yet, but I think in 2 to 3 years we could be looking at world-class players. So I personally think if he was to have his career at United, spend 10 years with us and remains injury-free, which is obviously a concern regarding his back and all that. But for me, if he could remain injury-free, I think you could possibly be looking at a world-class player in the future. And I think we could be, not to put any pressure on him, but I just think he has something about him where he's not fazed by, by being up top, playing for Manchester United. And I do think he's improved his game a bit, but I do think that he has the right attitude now. And as he gets better over the next few years, I think you could be talking about a real special player. So I'll probably go with him.
He's no Luke Shaw. NT has said at United at this point on current form, there aren't any world-class players. Luke Shaw is very good, but I wouldn't call him world-class. He has lapses defensively, although he is top going forward.
Name one left back that's better than Luke Shaw in world football. You won't be able to name one. You wouldn't.
There you go. Challenge set. I'm not playing this game.
Luke Shaw fan club here.
Yeah.
I'd argue Hannah Blundell.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Didn't know where else to go with that tone. What's this? Haaland exploded upon the Premier League while Rasmus is on a slow fuse. Yeah, well, let's hope that goes bang at some point soon. Do you know who I'd pick? And this is probably going to be controversial. Anthony Martial. Because I feel like when he's played and he's had a run and he hasn't had injury, he has the ability to be quite consistent and to score lots of goals. And when he came to us, he did that. But injuries have sort of blighted him and he can't go 5 minutes without shattering his glass leg. And before you know it, he has to have a new one rebuilt. I think I'd pick Anthony Martial, especially now, because with the striking options that we've had, I just think he would be someone who, with a run and that knowledge that he was like superhuman and could never be injured, it'd probably be all right. So, that's what I would have gone for, having heard that question. But interesting points all. We're going to look onto our season so far bit now over the next 10, 15 minutes, just to finish it off. And what I found interesting, I've listed all of our scores and results so far, just to remind me really of what's happened. And it's interesting because we've played 12 and we've won 6 and lost 6, which is about as close to a draw as you're going to get because we've had no draws at all yet this season, not a single one. So let's take a look, Tone, at the season so far. What do you think? Without going into the games into too much detail, what's your general thoughts and feelings on how this season has gone so far for Manchester United?
I think injuries have plagued us. I know that's not an excuse. I know a lot of teams are going through injury crisis, but I don't think Ten Hag at the start of pre-season went, you know what, Evans and Maguire are going to be starting Premier League games for me within the middle of October. I think it's been a lot of... It feels disjointed a lot of the time. Like I haven't seen a game apart from the Crystal Palace League Cup, which, to be fair, was against Crystal Palace's reserve team, where we've looked like we've had momentum, we've played around the ball around the park really well for consistent of period of the game. Like it feels like United are really good in moments, and the transitions have been really weird. Like I thought Onana coming in would transform our back play from the back. It really hasn't, to be honest. But I don't know if that's Onana's fault or the fault of, look, the defense isn't really all there at the moment. I think once we have players come back into the team, we'll see a different United. And I think Rasmus Højlund's only going to get better. I think once he gets his first Prem goal, he's gonna score for fun in some games. And I hope Rashford starts getting his shooting boots again and starts tucking them away, because we need him on form as well. But there's lots of things to be positive about. You know, our best game in the Premier League so far, in my opinion, was the game we lost against Arsenal away from home. I know we lost 3-1 that game, but we actually played really well in long periods of the game. And that dubious offside call, take that away, that if that wasn't offside, we win the game 2-1 or we draw 2-2. You take away the 2-0 against Spurs, you know, that penalty decision before half time, you know, it's a different game. I know people go excuses FC and things like that, but there's only been 1 or 2 games where I think we've been really outplayed, and it was Brighton and Bayern really outplayed us. I think a lot of games, you know, we've been there or abouts, and I think next week will be the biggest test of the season so far to see where we're at. Yeah. Jennifer's right.
Seems like a reasonable point. And yes, Jennifer is right. Sorry. All my buttons weren't working. Injuries matter, as the ladies have demonstrated. We have the squads and individuals to win silverware. John, it's been an interesting road for us. Wins against Wolves, Nottingham Forest, just. Burnley, just. Palace in the Carabao. Brentford and Sheffield United, both either sides of the international break, and with a 2-1 victory in the end. Defeats to Spurs, Arsenal, Brighton, Bayern, where Tony mentions we might have been outplayed, but we were close there, 4-3. You know, that could have very easily gone the other way around as well. Palace in the league after the demolition in the Carabao, and of course the Galatasaray game as well. Are you happy, bearing in mind the fact that we've had injuries, the fact that there has been a lot more to and froing and changing than we perhaps would have wanted to do? Are you happy with how the season's gone so far?
I don't think you can be happy, but I do think that, yeah, obviously injuries have played their role, but I also think that you look at some players who haven't been injured, who haven't performed. Like obviously Rashford has, you know, hit a goal, drown. He hasn't been the same. I think he has been playing a little bit better the last couple of games. I thought he was a bit better yesterday. He still needs to do more. But I've been amazed by the drop off of some players like Casemiro. I don't know how you can. What has happened to him exactly? I know he's top scorer or joint top scorer, but he looks a shadow of himself, and that's what my big worry for me is, that certain players who haven't been injured have been playing in their main position. You can forgive players like Lindelof being out of position, you can forgive Amrabat and that kind of thing, but the fact that you have some players playing in their main position not producing the goods has been a big worry for me. And you're looking at it and think, who the players who have actually performed to any level? So he's arguably our 2 best signings so far have been regular when he's played, and Johnny Evans possibly. They're possibly the 2 at this moment. You'd probably say they were the 2 best summer signings at this present moment. Amrabat, you can say maybe. I think the other issue is our home form, which, you know, losing to Brighton, obviously we lost to them last season, but losing to Galatasaray the way we did, and also Crystal Palace, it's unforgivable. And okay, you've lost games at Tottenham, Bayern Munich, and Arsenal, which are let's be honest, there are grounds you can lose, and you can't ask for 3 tougher away games than that. And we were a bit unlucky at Arsenal and that. But for me, it's a worry that we're losing so many games. But also, I think really the Palace League Cup game is probably the only game where you'd say we played well in that game. Every other game, you'd say we might have done okay, but not been great. And this is where my issue is with the team. I can't see an end to this, and I feel like it's one of them with this team. We'll have a couple wins, and then we'll lose a couple, almost. So we thought we'd turn the corner, beating Burnley, and then beating Palace League Cup. Then we lost to them. Then we lost to Galatasaray. Then we did beat Brentford. Now we beat Sheffield United. Now, can you beat Copenhagen and get a result against Man City? That's the challenge, the team. And this goes back to yesterday, that we should have won by more yesterday with the chances we had. And for me, it is a worry that we're not playing to any kind of level. Maybe it's to do with all the fixtures we played last season. I think the pre-season schedule was ridiculous. There was no need to play that many games personally. And I think some of the players are just exhausted. And it has had an impact on us this season. I hope that we can bounce back. Obviously, after the City game, I think we got a decent run of fixtures where we can pick up a few points, hopefully. But for me, we're now at the point where you got to look at that City game and say we probably need to win that game. Old Trafford just as some kind of statement. Do I have faith we do? I don't know. But for me, that's a game that you look at now. You need to win that to get your season back on track, I think. And it's a big game, and obviously City haven't been in great form themselves recently, and we have to try and got to try and get that siege mentality at Old Trafford again, because we had that great record at home, and we've lost 3 out of 4. We need to get that zeal back at Old Trafford, where we say you're not coming here to get any points. You might get a draw possibly if you play reasonably well, but you're not going to come here and win, and that's what we got to get back to. So that for me is a worry, and we'll learn a lot more this time next week.
NT agreeing with you here with regards to the pre-season madness every year. It is. I mean, it is literally a commercial thing. We're going off on tour just so that people can see us. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for people outside of the United Kingdom getting the opportunity to see United. I think that's a big thing and it's a good thing. But equally, the way in which that was going was absolutely crazy. And this year, more so than ever, when you were at a game and then another game the following day. So they were spreading people around. It was a bit of a weird one. And yeah, it needs to be what's best for the players and the football team and their pre-season preparation, rather than just how we're going to fill the coffers up a little bit more for the Glazers to continue with their plaything as they do. But that's another session. I want to talk about the Champions League because that's our next game. We've got Copenhagen coming up. This is FC Copenhagen, who currently have 1 point in the Champions League, more than we do. We are sat rock bottom of our group, which is, of course, no fun whatsoever. Group A. Bayern Munich with 6 points, Galatasaray with 4, Copenhagen with 1. Now, when the draw was made, we'd have looked at this game against Copenhagen and said, well, there's our 6 points. That's what we're getting. 3 if we beat Copenhagen at home, 3 if we beat them away. There's 6 of the 10 that's required. Obviously, losing both of our games against Bayern and Galatasaray wasn't helpful. Tony, do you feel going forward we're still in with a shout of progressing, or should we be looking to the Europa League again this season?
I genuinely think if we lose tomorrow, on Tuesday, beg your pardon, Champions League's done. We're not getting through. You'd have to, if we lose this, we'd get 9 points if we beat every team and win. And no offense to ourselves, I can't see us getting a result against that Bayern team at the moment, not with the team they have. Galatasaray is a very hard place to go to as well. It is going to be a seismic task if we don't get a result on Tuesday against Copenhagen. I think if we don't get the points that we need, I think we should just, not purposely, I never want United to lose on purpose, but I do think our attitude should shift elsewhere, because the Europa League's just pointless for us at this point. We haven't got the squad for it. I know a lot of teams don't have the squad, but we're already on depleted numbers. Playing on a Thursday, playing on a Sunday was a killer for us towards the end of the season last year. It's even going to be even worse this year. I think, even though it could be our only way of getting the Champions League next season, the importance of the next two games can't be understated. We need to win against Copenhagen on Tuesday.
But that's a possible trophy, the Europa League there, and you're saying
no, it's not. It's not that. It's not the fact. I love the fact that United have a chance to win trophies. That's not my argument here. My argument here is the fact, like,
I mean, NT's agreeing here.
Oh, good.
He's saying go Champions League.
Yeah,
we avoid the Europa League as opposed to going the other way, which is just drop out of it altogether.
Yeah, don't go wrong. I don't think we should lose on purpose. If we, we should bottle the rest of our fixtures. I just think Ten Hag's attitudes should shift, because the Europa League is just, for us right now, would be a nightmare with the squad we have.
Fair point, mate. Fair point. John, do you see us progressing in the Champions League, or should we follow Tony's defeatist attitude?
Well, I was full of doom when I did the midweek show after the Galatasaray. I can't be honest, I don't think we will get through the group. And, I mean, to stand any chance, we're going to have to beat Copenhagen home and away. Let's be frank. And, Tony mentions if we were to beat Copenhagen home and away, if we maybe get a draw in Galatasaray, that will give us 7 points. And Bayern Munich at home last game, Bayern Munich might have qualified by then, possibly. I know it's a bit of a conundrum, but for me, I agree with Tony. It's either top two in the group or you finish fourth, in my opinion, because I don't see us winning Europa League, because Liverpool are in it, aren't they? No, I can't really see us beating Liverpool, if I'm being honest, in the Europa League. And this is where I said about the team, that perhaps with the amount of exhaustion we have in the squad, we might have to just focus purely on the league and maybe a cup run, possibly. And that, because I can't see us being able to compete on 3 or 4 fronts. I think you can obviously focus on a League Cup run. Hopefully, we beat Newcastle. The league is always priority, and I think you can still get in the top 4 if you go on a winning run. And that, for me, is where if you are to bounce back and finish in the top 4, you got to virtually win all your remaining games, bar one, maybe drawing at, because you have to get 10 points. And this is where Galatasaray home game was such a blow. We had to win that game, and we ended up losing it somehow. And for me, hopefully we get a win. I think we might get a win. I think we'll probably get another narrow win, probably. No luck. And but I think even now, I think it's a tall ask, possibly. But all you can do is, if we beat Copenhagen home and away, Galatasaray, you probably expect Bayern Munich to beat them home and away, wouldn't you? So if we beat Copenhagen, they lose to Bayern Munich, they'll be on 4 points, and we'll be on, I think we'll be on 6 points if we beat Copenhagen. Then we play them away. So maybe then I think we just got to focus on winning home and away against Copenhagen. Then we'll see where it leaves us.
It's definitely the old one game at a time adage. And so with that in mind, let's take a look at the next 4 games in the Premier League. And let's be clear, this does blow my mind ever so slightly, because we've been languishing in mid-table like a pound shop Chelsea for the last couple of months, really. But what was incredibly interesting for me was the fact that if we play City and beat them, we are only going to be 3 points away from them. And they are currently top of the Premier League, which is quite something, to be honest with you. Now, obviously, if we did do that, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, they're on 21 and 20. They're likely to gain some points as well. But when you then consider, as you mentioned and alluded to, John, our next 3 games after that are Fulham away, Luton at home, and Everton away. The games that potentially are winnable. I say potentially because, Palace, Brighton, to name a few. But Tony, in terms of the league, you mentioned focusing on it. What should the focus be? Because a win against City doesn't quite put us in the conversation, but it keeps us not out of it. A loss, obviously, and I can't even remember I'm going to say it, but obviously at that point the title will appear to be long gone. Are our aspirations really just to finish in the top four again? And is it really worth it when currently we haven't done very well in the Champions League? Obviously we've got to do it, but is that something that we can consider a win, just a top four finish?
I think if you take away the first 6 games of the season, you have to consider that a win. Obviously, me personally, I want us to compete for everything. So, and you can never write yourself off in a derby against City.
Europa League.
Except, yeah, but the Europa League, it's not because I don't like the Europa League. It's purely because of the scheduling of the Europa League. If the Europa League was played the same like to the Champions League, I wouldn't have an issue with it, because ultimately it's the same amount of games we'd be playing in the Champions League. It's just the fact the Premier League screws us over with the scheduling, which is fair enough, and UEFA does. But I think these next few games, you know what? United could easily beat City next week. City haven't looked good this season at all in a lot of games. And honestly, last season, I thought that we were going to get spanked by City at home. And look what we did. We beat them 2-1. I know there's the dubious Rashford goal, but in a derby, anything can happen. If we don't beat Copenhagen on Tuesday, I'll be actually really surprised, because it's a must win. I know it sounds daft at this point in the Champions League, but that is must win. That game is must win now.
Yeah, I agree, John. How does the league look for you at the moment? Is it top four that we're aiming for, or do you feel like there's still a little bit of hope inside you that we could actually try and put some sort of challenge for the title?
Well, you might challenge. Can I see us winning it? No, but I do think that. I mean, Stu used the argument last year that if you go on a winning run, it'll take you somewhere. So if we were to win like 6 games in a row, we will shoot up the league, and we will be in contention. But the problem with United is if you look at season, we always tend to start seasons slowly. We tend to have a good autumn, winter, and then we tend to fade off towards the end. So I'm not sure, and obviously we don't know what's going on with the ownership. In terms of Radcliffe, will we have investment for January and all that? You might have to, but I think it's a case of seeing where you are at Christmas. My fear is that it's hard to get out of the fact that we've won 2 games before and then lost a couple this season. So I think now we've won 2 games in a row. We need to make it 3 by beating Copenhagen and then hopefully beating City. I do think you rather to have any aspiration, you would have to beat City. I don't have much faith that we will win the league or challenge for the league. I think top 4 is still realistic. This is my point about the Champions League. I'd rather just go out of it completely than go into Europa League, because then you can focus on the league then and see where we're at. So for me, it's more important that we build momentum in the league, and then seeing where we go from there. But for me, unfortunately, I still think top 4 is the priority at the moment, and hopefully a cup, maybe win the League Cup again or something, and then we'll see where it takes us from there. But yeah,
it's sad in a way, though, isn't it? Because the only reason we want in top 4 is just so we can get that extra bit of income, which ultimately for us as a football club is basically to earn our pocket money to be able to actually, go out and buy players, because nobody else is going to put any more money into our club as it stands. NT, I've just got to say, if you're watching the game from under the duvet, then you probably won't see much, mate. So
we've got to bear in mind, though, the Champions League completely changes next season, doesn't it? Because I was just thinking about that a moment ago. Because doesn't a legacy club get a Champions League place next season, even if they fit?
I think there's some kind of rule that England. I've heard different stories. Legacy club might get in, or if England, or if every, as long as at least one English club gets out of the group stages, the Champions League, we're guaranteed to get 5 places. I've heard different things, so it's hard to say. I suspect that if we were to finish 5th, then we will probably get in the Champions League next year. But it might be to do with European pedigree as well. So, for example, if we finish 5th, we might get in. But let's say if a team like Brighton finish 5th, it might not. So it just depends on that as well. So, but for me, it's hard to say, isn't it?
It's weird, mate. It's weird, honestly.
Just finish first.
Yeah.
Cool.
All they have to do is win the league, John. That's all that needs to happen.
Just win the league. Cut the other crap out.
But it does change, and the silly change at this time will be that instead of there being the groups, it will just be 32 teams. 36 sides, and the 2 of the 4 extra places are awarded to countries whose clubs have performed the best in the previous campaign. So it's a bit mad. It's one of those where the 5th place person could get there, providing the other teams do well. So effectively, if we don't go through in the Champions League, we're going to want all 3 other English teams to make up the final and the semi-finals, just so that we can potentially get 5th place if we wanted it. So
come on, the legacy spot. Come on.
Just win the Champions League.
When they do it, they should change the name to the place where you make a lot of money league or something like that, because
it doesn't have the same ring to it though, Barry.
It doesn't have the same ring to it, but it means the right thing. Last question really that I wanted to ask you before we disappear was to do with obviously the Carabao Cup. We have got Newcastle United, a repeat of the final coming up soon. How are we feeling about that? Because we're talking about all these other games. The Carabao Cup was the one thing we won last season. It's bizarre. It hurts because I remember always referring to this as the Mickey Mouse Cup when we were back in the halcyon days. Nobody really cared about it too much. Now it could be the only thing we end up winning. What's your thoughts on the game against Newcastle? Because they are doing reasonably well again this season. Tone, how do you see that game going?
You know what? We actually show up in the Carabao Cup more often than that. So I'm not gonna. If it was a normal league game, I'd say it'd be a very tough game. But I fancy us against Newcastle. Newcastle always bottle it in the big moments. They always do. They did it at Wembley, in their big day out, and I can see it happening again. I don't want to jinx it. I say this now. We lose 4-0. Don't blame it on me.
Might be a bit too late for that.
I know, touch wood. But it's like you said, Barrett, it's the only thing we're probably going to win. We've got a chance to win this season. I think we have to put all our efforts into it. It all depends on how Ten Hag sees it, to be fair. I think he'll play very strong and go for it, because what's he got to lose?
Before we won to Carabao, Tone, would you see that as successful this season?
Maybe a stability, like in the sense of like it's stable, not progress, not regression. I think there's a lot of factors you have to put into this. Like, I know the players probably don't care about what's happening upstairs as much as we do, but that must be causing some kind of tension between all parties within the club. I think once that gets resolved, we'll see I'm hoping a lot more fluidity and just calmness within the team and the club. I'm hoping so anyway.
And NT's point here, brilliant. Trophies have proven to not be enough to keep a manager in a job at United. Let's not forget Louis van Gaal won the FA Cup and he was sacked right off. Mourinho won a couple of trophies. He was sacked right off. Solskjaer didn't win any trophies and made the top 4 3 years on the trot. Oh, see you later, Ollie. We need stability. A manager to have enough time. Top 4 almost guarantees ETH's job. That's where the almost comes in. So that's why I'm for it. Brilliant point. John, final word from you on the Carabao Cup. Would it be a successful season for you if we come out of it having won just the Carabao again this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm old-fashioned in that I believe that success is winning trophies. So I think retaining the League Cup will be successful. past because would have to be obviously Newcastle, and we'll see who we're getting later on. So yeah, I will class it as success if we were to win the Cup. I would like us to compete more, like maybe the FA Cup and that. And I think top four, we have to get in the top four, but I wouldn't class it as success if we achieved that and won nothing. So for me, it's success to win the League Cup, but that doesn't mean say you can just do that on your own and finish 10th. You got to be competitive in the league as well, which is a basic requirement for any team, any Manchester United team. So for me, yes, I would say retaining it will be success. I think it's obviously repeated the final. Obviously, Newcastle will be sensing blood and revenge after last year, and hopefully we'll be good enough to beat them. So, and obviously they beat City. Isn't that ironic? We would have played City. If City had won that game against Newcastle, we would have been playing them twice in a week, wouldn't we?
Well, indeed. So there we are. We've covered everything. We've done all the bases we wanted to cover. We've obviously spoken about the Sheffield United game, the fact that we won 2-1, which is still just wonderful to be able to say, to be honest with you. Of course, we've looked back over the amazing legend that was Sir Bobby Charlton, and we have looked at how this season has gone so far. Lots to do. Jennifer has just put here, in that respect, any domestic trophy is important, which it is, and let's be honest, a trophy is a trophy, unless of course it's the Community Shield, which is...
What are you on about? I still count the Century Cup that we won against Liverpool last pre-season.
Well, I mean, why not? Arsenal fans were doing that for years with their friendly cups, weren't they? Until Arteta came along and won them a couple of FA Cups. Anywho, go on.
One FA Cup. That's all he's won.
One?
Yeah, only one.
You'd think it was hundreds the way they go on.
Yeah.
But, so Mourinho counted it. We won a treble if you ask him. Well, this is why you don't ask Jose Mourinho. You might be able to count to 3, but not on trophies that matter. The Community Shield is one you've got to get. It's a bit like the Super Cup. It's just.
I class it, the Community Shield, with the trophy we won the previous season as well. Because it makes no sense to say, you want it, because we had it with David Moyes, didn't we? Because his game was winning Charity Shield. He was like, well, no, that's based on winning the league last season with Fergie. So it's kind of like the last game of last season rather than the first game of this season, isn't it? So for me, yeah.
Well, I kind of see where you're going with that one. But by that logic, then qualifying for the Champions League was last season's as well, because that's just how you get there. So I kind of see where you're going, but it's a pointless fixture. It's just there.
I love what boxes.
We're starting next week.
It's ironic that the Super Cup in other countries is seen as a big trophy, whereas we in England see the Community Shield as a bit kind of thing. So
it's probably because, like you say, people have forgotten what's happened last season and they're all ready for the new. And it is just literally just a game, nothing special. Other teams go off and finish their friendlies off on those sort of days. So you've got all these friendlies going on, and there's the Community Shield smack back in the middle of it at Wembley, as ever. And to be fair, they talk about changing things around. That's what I'd quite like to see, is sort of taking those neutral venues back into place, so that it depends who the two teams are that are playing, and then they move the fixture around each year rather than always just being at Wembley. Especially if you've got like United and City playing, where would be a neutral place for them? I don't know. Burnley, that could be a good one. Jesus. Does Moyes have the record for winning a trophy in the least amount of time in the job? Probably technically no, because I'm sure there's been others.
No, Ten Hag won one first game, Century Cup.
He's at it again. That Century Cup, he loves it, doesn't he? How dare you take away Moyes' trophy? Do you know what?
Well, they did. Van Gaal won a pre-season trophy, didn't they? In his first few games.
The Champions Cup, whatever they called it.
Yeah,
the Champions Cup. It's sad that I remember these stupid trophies.
Yeah.
Goodness me. Ah, yes, the glorious Century Cup.
And Box Centenary Cup.
They've ruined the Italian and Spanish versions by shipping them off to the Middle East during the mid-season. I don't know. Probably how the Americans feel about the NFL coming over here, to be honest with you, but there we are. So, yeah, there we go. That is another week in the history books. We'll have to wait and see. If Dan's back, then I'm sure there'll be a show on Wednesday with regards to how we've got on against Copenhagen. If not, then I might brave the weather and do a Thursday show. We shall see. But I'm sure there'll be some sort of reaction to Copenhagen. And, of course, a look ahead to what is just a ridiculously massive game now, isn't it? Not that they're never big, but the game against City just that little bit more riding on it. My thanks to you all. Listen, John, goodness me, I'll go away and just crawl up on a sofa, I think, after this and hope that I'll make it through the night. Your column, that's the word I was after. The column that you did, I've put it out through the All for United
Thank you very much.
Twitter. So if you want to have a read on John's wonderful little bit of effort there, giving Bobby Charlton his dues, then you may go and watch and read it that way then, because I know you've got a private Twitter, don't you? So that would only reach
it's public, I think so.
Oh, I see. You got out of the country and then you weren't worried about people finding you anymore. I've got you.
Yeah, exactly.
See what you did there.
That's a bit.
Okay.
No, it's not on public. It's on public. So
but
give it a read. Obviously, I'll try to encapsulate. Obviously, it was a tough day yesterday, and I just thought I'd do a piece together with a glass of red, over it. So it was literally written how I felt, and obviously I've put a bit of effort into it. So if you can give it a read and promote it, if you can, that'd be much appreciated. And I hope you enjoy reading it, everyone.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. That is Big Johnny K. Tony's not done any writing, but he did manage to create a video that actually moved, as opposed to just being sat there like that. And not actually.
Every little helps. Honestly, progress is progress,
isn't it? So good to have you all on. Thank you again in the comments as well. As ever, helps keep the show ticking along nicely. Whatever your thoughts are, whether you're in or out, or thinking we're doing well, or Scott McTominay's rubbish, or Harry Maguire's the king, we don't care. At the end of the day, they're all just opinions. And ultimately, that's what we're here for. So a big thank you. Cheers, everybody, for joining us. Probably back Wednesday, Thursday. Until then, good luck.